Hello and welcome to another episode of The Poems I Love. My name is Olaitan Junaid and this is the first of my many appearances on this podcast. For this episode and subsequent ones, I've decided to share with you poems from different generations of African writers. Why so? Well, comparative readings of poems written in the last century and the current one have mostly highlighted the differences in this poems rather than the similarities. So through my readings, I would like to spotlight the area of convergence between these two generations of writers. So for today, I'm going to be taking 3 poems, and the first will be Wole Soyinka's Telephone Conversation. Telephone Conversation. The price seemed reasonable. Location, indifferent. The landlady swore she lived off premises. Nothing remained but self-confession. Madam, I want. I ate a wasted journey. I am African. Silence. Silenced transmission of pressurized good breeding. Voice when it came. Lipstick coated, long gold rolled, cigarette odor piped. Caught I was folly. How dark? Had not misheard. Are you light or very dark? Stench of rancid, breath of public, I don't speak. Red boot, red pillar box, red double-tiered omnibus, squelching tar. It was real. Shamed by ill-mannered silence. Surrender pushed, dumbfounded to beg. Simplification. Considerate she was, varying the emphasis. Are you dark or very light? Revelation came. You mean like plain or milk chocolate? Her accent was clinical, crushing in its light impersonality. Rapidly, wavelength adjusted. I chose West African sepia and as afterthought down in my passport. Silence for spectroscopic flight of fancy till truthfulness clanged her accent hard on the mouthpiece. What's that? Conceding. Don't know what that is. Like Brunei? That's dark, isn't it? Not altogether. Facially, I am Brunei, but madame, you should see the rest of me. Palm of my hand, soles of my feet are a peroxide blonde. Friction caused foolishly, madam, by sitting down has turned my bottom raven black. One moment, madam. Sensing a receiver rearing on the thunderclap about my ears. Madam, I pleaded, wouldn't you rather see for yourself? Alright, the second poem I'll be reading is by Chisom Okafor and is titled In Telephone Conversation with My Father, where he inquires about my marriage plans. A dagger navigating through a gulf of wire calls meets the center point of my forehead. Just after it spells out the words, lost between the frontiers of things I desire and what I must be. I want to tell him about the ringing cold or the house sparrow who, homeless after tree was felled, had made a nest just at the edge of my window's sill. Instead, I say, Baba, I don't think the telephone line is clear enough for this conversation. All right. So, what do I find fascinating about this poem? Well, there are quite a lot of things that makes this poem admirable, and one of them has to do with the technical similarity between these two poems written, across different generations. The first, what we could call a classical, African poem, and then the other by Chisom Okafor, a contemporary African writing. In spite of the, disparity, in time, this poem are actually similar, like I said, technically. And to be more specific, these poems employ the telephone conversation technique, and we could see how the conversation between two persons, that is the persona and their addressee, the conversation between them on the phone line unfold into something either more delicate or mundane. As in the case with Wole Soyinka's telephone conversation, we could see how the conversations, help to reveal the racial prejudice, and some of the plights, particularly of Black immigrants. On the other end, the conversation between the speaker and then their addressee, in the case of Chisom Okafor's poem, is more of the relationship between the speaker is more intimate. It's that of a filial relation between the father and then the person who is the son. And we could see across these two poems how the telephone line, or more generically technology, can function as an intermediary between people of different generations, the father and the son, and then between people of different racial background, in the case of Wole Soyinka's poem. Another thing that I find likened to these poems is the narrative. So these poems are more narrative than lyrical. That is, they are based on narration, and we could see the speaker in these two poems sharing or rendering their experience, with someone, one which they had over the phone. Yeah. So basically, they are here to just tell us of their experience. All right. One in the case of, a racial, a biracial experience or interracial experience, let me put it that way. And then the other, which is more domestic, between the father and the child. That said, another similarity between these two poems is what they do to the reader. So more than anything else, these poems want us to think, to ponder, rather than to feel. They are not really emotive in their telling of these experiences. Rather, they want us to think, about these experiences. Yeah, whether we are familiar with them or not, So they are more of like, oh, you should think. And I think, that's another, similarity that these poems, share. I could remember sometime in 2020, I was privileged to attend a poetry masterclass, and I think one of the teachers was Chisom Okafor himself, and he talked about the similarities. No, he shared selected poems with us, and he was trying to identify he was trying to paint an argument, saying that most of the contemporary poems that we read are not, do not actually come from a vacuum, that they are largely influenced by poems written in the earlier century. And I think while that wasn't so clear to me, I think it's when I read this poem of his, I think I would agree with him, because yeah, most of these poems are tied, whether loosely or not, to poems that were written in the earlier century, and this is one of them. I think I would like to also share another poem that's that is similar to these two poems in terms of the technicality, the mode of narration, that is the telephone conversation, as a mode of narration, or as an intermediary between the speaker and the person that they're addressing. So, and I think this poem is by Olaitan Junaid and is titled Offering. At the morgue, I tell the cause of each victim's death by the missing body parts, their faults by the size of tongue cuts. At the morgue, I tell injustice by how imperfect the shape of bullet holes, the deepest wounds cutting through to protest sight far beyond and wide. By dotting a bloodied scalpel through rubbed folds of flesh, I make a list of bodies after bodies unclaimed and burned to ash. Where the ash settles, a sewage of blood runs into it. Where a country was toward and fell, blood becomes ash, becoming offering. Offering is the lifeless body dangling at the edge of the pathologist's workbed, the mouth frothing as if struggling to crush into language to his offering. If I take this offering and forgive my country, who will forgive me? At the morgue, by which I mean the other side of a country, my father calls weeping. Says he fears the country he gave me will someday kill me. My father, who never cries, keeps mourning and mourning my death before arrival. After the call, I press my chest against the earth to know where the violence began. In the beginning, there was a country. In the country, a gathering. At the gathering, a rupturing. Since the rupturing, my brother won't come back home. Neither will the young company worker down the hood. This unmarked body refusing silence, I fear would pass easily for the vicar's son. Hey, look. My hand steadies a coffin beautifully, by which I mean I'm here for my brother, by which I mean he's stayed here long enough to outlive another's essence. For the second time, my father calls to ask if it's okay to wake up thirsty after a long night spent by a riverside. In response, I say some dreams barely have consequences, and this is one of them. Again, he asks. Same words, same breath, same tone. Its ache potent as the first. And because I have no tongue for language, I play dead. Bite hard into the soft of my fingertip to draw blood. The blood I offer to every childhood spent learning to survive the silence, unsettling after a gunshot. The blood I offer to long nights spent reading poems about ghosts and ghouls to scare us awake. And why is tomorrow's pathway edgy as a knife? If I dream of my country too often, won't I lose my head? If I run back to childhood's tomb, will that too harm me much? In a short while, my father calls to announce a stranger's arrival. In 3 days' time, there'll be morning after morning after morning in my father's compound. Briefly, the janaza will hold, and after, a burial without a body. In semi-brief, the widower's loss becomes music, becoming memory. Yeah, so basically this poem touches on national issue, national or systematic violence, a country that brutalizes its young, and we see how these instances of brutalization, of systematic violence unfold through a telephone conversation between the persona and their father. So on these notes, I shall leave you. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.